What's up, y'all? It's Tech Talks with Chris and Key. My name is Chris Quashi. I am a network engineer, and I'm here with.
Reginald Keyshawn Billups. I am a software engineer at Lockheed Martin.
Cool. So today we came together to talk to you guys about different aspects of tech. So myself as a network engineer and Key, who is a software engineer, we both are in the tech space, but as network engineers and software engineers, there tends to be a little bit of there's definitely differences between both of us in our career fields. So today we wanted to come and combat our ideas and see what's different, what's the same, and what we kind of do in our lines of work. So Key, if you want to give us a little bit of a background about what you do as a software engineer, and after that, I'll kind of go over what I do as a network engineer, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, as a software engineer, I primarily create backend solutions. So, for example, the team I work on is a team responsible for efficiency. So instead of having customers, my customers are other employees. So we help make them more efficient by creating tools that pull from the database and do X, Y, and Z.
Cool, cool. So yeah, I like how you mentioned that you work and you do what you produce is for the users inside of internal employees. So that's kind of the same I do for a network engineer. So as a network engineer, we are configuring and deploying network infrastructure for our company pretty much. So things I tend to do are like configure firewalls, configure routers, and deploy them throughout the company and make sure that they are secure, make sure that they have the proper routes to different locations, whether it be because it's in a big company, you have places in India, you have places in Washington, D.C. Make sure there's routes that connect each of those sites pretty much. So broad overview, but that's kind of what I do as a network engineer. Now, Key, if you want to talk a little bit about how did you get into the software engineering space?
So I graduated with my bachelor's in computer science from Kennesaw State University. Most of my experience and the thing I was able to brag on during my interviews came from participating in hackathons, which is a competition that it's basically a coding competition. I was able to win a couple, so that led me to many opportunities. However, the way I got my job was by going to the National Society of Black Engineers conference and putting my foot out there. Many companies reached out to me before I was even had to pitch, so I had interviews lined up. And this was the prime year for a computer science student, or a little bit on the down slope.
What year was it?
2023.
Okay.
So we had went to Kansas City. And yeah, Lockheed, I had several offers, but Lockheed was the one I ended up picking because it was local and it just fit. In Marietta, still here. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So as far as the job fair that you go to, you said you went to the NSB conference. Was that the NSB 49? Was that?
I think it may have been 49 or 50. I'm not gonna
Okay.
lie, I don't know.
Okay. So how did you stand out when you went to those different conferences?
Um, Probably my resume, because I didn't really have to pitch. I put my resume into the system, and the employers reached out to me. So it could have been the hackathon experience, it could have been internship experience, and yeah, I think perhaps that's just
Okay.
probably what it was.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I actually went to the NSB conference this year and similar experience, not many as the, top name companies, but I feel like it's a very good opportunity to reach out, network with a lot of people. I mean, I talked to a lot of companies. I actually got a couple offers as well. None that were better than my current position, but had a couple offers as well. So that's one thing I always tell people. If you can go to these conferences, go to those conferences because it's really on you to make the best impression of yourself. Because a lot of people go to these conferences expecting to just do what? Just talk and expect to have a job. That's a lot of them. They go in there and they don't really put in the work, but you really have to go in there and honestly almost sell yourself and show the people the best version of yourself. So yeah, going to conferences is honestly one of the best ways to really advance and move up in this tech space.
And then also putting in the work beforehand as well. I mean, were you in clubs? Did
Yeah.
you do, like, for example, computer science? Were you in a hackathon?
Yeah.
Were you applying to internships before? Many factors that lead up. You don't just get to the conference and hey, here's the job. You got to put in the work beforehand. Do you have a 4.0 GPA?
Yeah.
I didn't. I had
Right.
a 3.1. So, you know.
Yeah, and also question for you kind of on that. So, with software engineering, a lot of people are starting to see the rise in AI. How has that rise in AI kind of, impacted your job and your career trajectory as a software engineer?
So with the rise of AI, I would say it definitely puts a little bit more wariness on the field. Generally, I'm gonna just say it. Nerdy people are more pessimistic, although I feel like they should be more optimistic. So if you go on like a computer science Reddit or Instagram comments, it might be doomerism, but I would say it's impacted my job by Lockheed Martin. It has their own internal AI, so you can't just go use like ChatGPT.
Right.
So with that, it has limitations. But I mean, it's made me more efficient. I primarily use AI with documentation and kind of picking up perhaps a new language if the AI knows the language, because
Yeah.
you do have proprietary languages. But it's made me more efficient, probably more wary, so much so that I'm gonna get my master's in cybersecurity. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even think I was gonna go back to school.
Right.
But more wariness, more efficient, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you on that. I mean, one thing I always say is that the people who know how to use AI to do their job are the people who are going to succeed. The people who steer away from AI and they don't want nothing to do with AI, those are the people who are potentially going to be left behind. Because if you are able to use AI to do your job even better, you're going to be a lot more efficient than the person who's just still trying to, write 80 lines of code and not use a single line of AI. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Do you use AI as a network engineer?
So as a network engineer, yes and no, right? So when we are configuring sites, most of the time there's a standard template that we go by, and from one router to the next router, it's more than likely going to be the same within the same organization. But where AI comes into play is things like scripting and automation. So when we have maybe 5 firewalls staged right here, and we want to make sure we can get that configuration on all of these without having to single-handedly go into each device and do that configuration. We are able to use tools like Python and PowerShell, Ansible. We use those tools to pretty much script and write automation scripts for those devices. So yeah, AI can help us with those scripts to make our processes a lot better.
Okay, would you say you're good at coding?
Would I say I'm good at coding? I can code. I graduated with a degree in information technology, which isn't very code based. We took a lot of the same classes that computer science took in the early stages, but eventually veered off to more things that related to hardware and a lot of other aspects of IT, right? So as far as coding, I can code because I like to build websites as well. So that's more of a personal. I can code because I like to do other things extracurricular. But if it was just up to my school curriculum coursework, nah, I'd be nah.
For sure. Okay, okay. And as a network engineer, um, how did you feel about AI? Did you think it was going to have any impact on your field, or?
Not necessarily no, because a lot of the things is that you have to know what to do. Just like even with software engineering, you still have to know a good bit to even be able to use AI effectively, right? So me coming from the networking and security background, I never had a fear that AI will really take my job, but I have been able to use AI, like I said, with automation to make my job a lot better. And that's what I feel is keeping my hopes of the AI won't, take me out of the field in maybe 10 years or so. I'm still able to use AI to benefit rather than to just use it to completely do my whole job. If that makes sense.
Okay, and how much of your job is actually physical, like you going into maybe a server room?
Yeah.
How much is it?
So currently right now, in my current role, I'd say about 85% I'm working from home, but a lot about like maybe the other percent I am in office. So what happens is when there is a brand new site, like say we want to open up a site in Dallas, Texas, and we've never had a site in Dallas, Texas, us on the network engineering department are going to go into that site and actually have to put in the physical hardware to make sure the site stays up, whether it be servers, whether it be routers, firewalls, all of that, even the physical cables that terminate from the internet service provider to that actual site, we have, dealings with that. So anytime we're doing an expansion, building a new site, or decommissioning an old site, I'm in office, touching stuff and working with the team to make sure that site is up and running or taken down efficiently.
So where have you traveled?
I've traveled a couple places. So I have been to Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been to Florida. I've also been to Houston, Texas as well. We had a site in Houston, Texas. That was one of our bigger sites that we opened up, and that was very hands-on. A lot of cabling running it from, because that site has about 3 floors. So we had to run cables from, the 33rd floor to like the 36th floor, just about. And it was hectic, but very good hands-on experience. That's one thing I also really like about network engineering, because there's roles where you are pretty much able to work 100% remote and do configurations from basically the comfort of your own home. But if you like that aspect of being able to go into office and touch actual stuff, you also have the opportunity to do that. So,
Okay.
also for you, software engineering, how often are you working from home? How often are you in office?
Okay, so I would say because the team I work for is, providing efficiency for other teams, I'm not as hand on as I would like to be. So,
Right.
for example, there are other teams that like we make the C-130J. That's a military airplane. So we have a simulator, have ended it, flown it, and the software engineers that work on those teams that are direct to the plane, they have to do more lab work. I never actually go into the lab. All right, and then in regards to me working from home, I don't work from home anymore at all. When I started out working, it was 2 days in the office, 2 days remote. But things change, administrations change, culture changes,
Right.
and they start pushing us back full time in office. So now I work 4 days in office, 10 hours a day, and we have Fridays off.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like an awesome schedule. Honestly, if I could get Fridays off, I would love that. But so you being in office now, pretty much full time in office, do you prefer that, or what do you think about? Would you prefer to go back to a role where you were pretty much remote, 100%?
In regards to the company I work for, I mean, I don't mind because I do make a good bit of money. So I'm okay kind of going in there. But if I were to be able to make the same and keep the same schedule, I would pick remote, of course.
Okay.
But I'm not upset about it. And if I could find a role that was hybrid that paid more money, perhaps I would go.
Okay. And how long have you been in the software engineering space?
I've been a software engineer for 2 years.
Okay.
Like working full time, and of course, like you go through school. And I came to computer science completely fresh. So yeah, so 2 years of software engineer, full time.
Okay, cool. So for entry level software engineer roles, and you don't really have to get into your own specific, but what can someone who's looking to be a software engineer expect as far as salary in the current market today?
So I'll take you through some offers I've gotten, and I'm gonna go by locations too. So East Coast, let's just say East Coast South. So in Georgia, Florida, this fine. I'd probably say you could probably make about 60 to 90 entry level. That's what I would expect, and I probably wouldn't take less. If I was on the West Coast, which I got offer from American Express in Arizona, they were offering about 96,000 with no. I think it's like 90,000 with like a 7,500 bonus.
Mhm.
And then like a West Coast like Cali, probably like 150,000. I had a interview with Snapchat, but I just didn't go through with it because I had already got too comfortable. I probably still went through
Right,
with
right.
it, but so I would say East Coast South probably about 60 to 80.
Yeah.
North, more up north, more higher cost of living. You need probably about 120 to 150.
Yeah, cost of living does definitely take a toll on that. I know, because to live in New York versus living in somewhere like Alabama, two completely different things. So
For sure. What about a network engineer?
So honestly, for network engineers, and one thing I kind of like about it, because it's so slept on. So people don't really know that the salaries for network engineers exceed 100K. People don't really look at network engineers as that position. Excuse me, that salary range. So starting off as a network engineer, you can expect to make at least 90K to start off as a network engineer. Reason being, because network engineering isn't necessarily an entry level role, right? So most people who get into the field of network engineering have started off as a network administrator and then move into a network engineering. So that makes the network engineering salaries a little bit higher than a standard network administrator, right? So network engineering, you usually expect to make at least 90K and above. Just like you, I had a couple offers. I've had offers that I have declined. I had an offer, just to put it in perspective, I had an offer in Alabama in the middle of nowhere that was paying 110K, but the location was not somewhere I would want to be, kind of in the sticks. I would have to do to take that offer. It wasn't, at my best interest in the moment.
Okay. So let me ask this. What is a technical interview like for a network engineer?
So technical interview is they ask a lot of questions regarding how to connect different routes. So with network engineering, you have to know how to use technologies like BGP, OSPF, ISIS, which are these are different kind of routing technologies that route different sites across the world. If you cannot, so excuse me, let me backtrack really quick. So one of the large, it's not a language, it's called Cisco. I'm sure you're familiar with Cisco. Cisco, you're not familiar with Cisco. Okay, Cisco is they make hardware and software for network devices. They're one of the largest. They actually are the largest, and Cisco CLI is what most network engineers use to configure devices, right? So you have to be very, very good in Cisco CLI to make it far inside of the field of network engineering. So a lot of the time in an interview, they will ask you they will put like an emulator or simulator, and you configure an actual device and, configure the routes to a different site, and then ask you technical questions about like what color is the fiber supposed to be for a single mode fiber. You have to know what that fiber is, what the color of that fiber is supposed to be, what type of fiber is supposed to be used. And it can be very tricky if you haven't really dived deep and been hands-on with those technologies before. But one of the biggest things is really routing. Being able to know how to configure a route between a site all the way in the United Kingdom to a site that's in Japan, that's one of the hardest things that you can do if you have never really done it in a live environment. So,
okay, pretty cool. For a software engineer, the technical interview is the one I've had when I went to the NSB conference. And now that you said 51, it was probably 49.
Yeah.
So at NSB 49, for American Express, I had to hand write code on a whiteboard and solve. It was basically a leak code-esque problem, and I could pick the language, and I had probably about 15 minutes or 20 minutes to do two. And a lot of people, they'd be like, how can you do this? I mean, if you actually know, how to solve a problem, doing it with code is not that hard. Especially if it's like an easy or medium-esque level, you should be able to solve it. When I go on college campuses and I have people solve leak code problems to see what they really been picking up stuff, I can tell if they're gonna be able to solve it. And if they don't start moving in 5 minutes, I already know they can't solve it, because you need to have at least a thought and then you iterate to success. So, that's an FYI out there. If you can't come up with a solution or at least a type of solution in 5 to 10 minutes, you don't know what you're doing. And that's fine. Keep practicing.
Yeah. So how on that, how much does college curriculum actually prepare you for technical interviews with these big companies?
So probably not that much. I would say school teaches you how to solve problems, but you like we were saying earlier, you have to do extra stuff.
Yeah.
Especially for computer science. I remember one summer, data structures and algorithms. I went and read a data structures and algorithms for dummies book over the summer, because as most people know, the class is pretty hard.
Yeah.
So that prepped me a lot just for my technical interviews. Me just reading that book prepped me for my technical interviews, because it's really in depth. And I forget the question you asked.
No, you're good. Did you do a lot of leak code as well?
I didn't do as much leak code. Literally, that book, it helped me.
Really?
It gave me a good foundation.
Okay.
data structures, and it teaches you what a data structure does, and then once you understand different data structures, you can apply them to solve a problem. So I mean, yeah, I didn't do that much leak code. I was just able to pretty much just solve it.
Okay, cool. So another question for you. So, in my field, we live off of certifications. There's certifications like CompTIA. There's certifications. Cisco has a couple certifications. FortiGate, Fortinet, they have a couple certifications. How important are certifications in software engineering?
I wouldn't say they're that important. I would say what's more so, you have to be able to solve the problem with code, and then like you can either go boot camp or traditional school. I'm not gonna lie, I've seen people get jobs with a boot camp. Like I have
Yeah.
a shout out to Torrance Evans. He did do boot camp and he works at JP Morgan.
Okay.
So you can definitely do it with the boot camp. So I would say boot camp or school is what I would suggest, not necessarily certifications.
Okay.
Well, you just said.
Well, yeah, for us, mainly it's certifications that validate your knowledge. So you can go through school because obviously my degree is not a network engineering degree, right? So school just verifies that you have the basis down of, especially, I mean, for my degree, right? That you have the basis down about what IT is, right? You know what a local area network is. You know what an IP address is. You know these basic things that will then transfer over to your job later. So with us, when you start breaking into the field, you have to start looking into certifications. They have entry level certifications like maybe a CompTIA A plus. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but CompTIA is one of the biggest, IT certifications for people in IT. So you might start off with a CompTIA A plus, but as you get deeper in the field, like maybe you want to get a cybersecurity role, you might go to a CompTIA Security Plus, which is more catered towards cybersecurity. But if you want to get into network engineering, you might start looking at a Network Plus, and then eventually Cisco CCNA, which is one of the highly regarded best certifications to get breaking into network engineering.
So let me ask you this: do you think it's worth it to go back to school then, if you want to be a network engineer and it requires a certain certification?
Yeah, absolutely. So all going back to school does is make you more qualified for the job, because even as a network engineer, we still deal with things that pertain to cybersecurity. Just this week, I was working on it's called a port security. I was working on a port security project. Port security is basically when there's a device called a switch that connects the local area network inside of a network, and with port security, you are able to go and configure that switch to only allow Mac based users. So basically, if I want to plug my device into one of the network jacks inside of our network, I would not be able to unless my MAC address matches up with what was configured for that port. So those are just small little things that you do that pertain to cybersecurity that are inside of network engineering. Because as network engineering, we're still trying to protect the network. As much as we're, making sure the network is running, we are doing what we can to protect the network. I also deal with things like access control lists. I configure access control lists on our firewalls for many different reasons, whether it be, blocking an IP address or a domain, whatever it is. I still deal with a good bit of cybersecurity on my day-to-day job.
Okay, fair enough. So school makes you more qualified. It can only help, not hurt. That's kind of what I took.
Pretty much. Depending on where you are in your career. So I wouldn't recommend, running through school if you still don't have a job and you have no experience at all, because that kind of makes you have to have the hands-on experience. And I'm sure you know this. You have to have the hands-on experience, whether it be a home lab. You need to have some form of hands-on experience, because you can go to an interview and say you have a degree and a PhD in cybersecurity, but if you've never touched anything, you've never actually been in a situation where it depends on you to fix this, then you're pretty worthless at that point. So I say you work in the field for a little bit, maybe you intern in college in the field for a little bit, and then you decide to go back to school. I feel like that's a good move if you can vouch for yourself that you know what you're doing in the field.
Okay, so let me ask you this as well. How important are projects in that side? I know in software engineering, reasonably important.
Yeah. So I feel like the software engineering is a little bit more important. with y'all because certifications back up our knowledge. So with us though, they are important in the fact of in the terms of knowing what you're doing. So if you're not able to get hands-on experience in a real environment, working on projects like currently me, I have a home lab where I have a server running, I have a router in there, and it's just simulating an actual environment. It's not an actual environment. It's not something that, if it breaks, the whole world will be over. It's not one of those. But I'm able to use it and practice my skills when I'm studying for higher level certifications. So in those projects are what you are able to talk about when you go to interviews. So when you go to an interview, either you're speaking on your experience and you don't have any real technical experience with a real company, you can go back to the home lab and told them how you built up a server and how you put different services on that server and connected it to the network and done all kind of protocols. So those are our kind of projects, but certifications also back up our knowledge.
Fair enough. Yeah, for software, I would say they're highly important.
Yeah.
Especially on the hackathon piece. But I still to this day, like, if I can solve a real world problem with code,
Yeah.
I'll do it. Like, not even just for the experience. For example, I don't know if you use Discord.
Yeah.
But you can make a bot in Discord, and one problem is I identified was my friends wouldn't know when I was in the Discord, the voice channel. So from that, I went and created a bot that just prints to the chat that someone joined, like their username and XYZ joined the chat. So that's like example of a real world problem that you identify and you go solve with code. So there's many ways to.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so what's a day in a life like as a network engineer?
Right. So a day in the life of a network engineer really varies day to day, as most jobs do. So, but on a standard day, right, I will wake up, check the
What
ticket
time?
queue. Usually, I wake up about 8 o'clock. Since I work from home. I don't have to go to commute to the office most of the time. So wake up about 8 o'clock and I'm able to really just jump onto my computer and get my day started. Um, so around that time when I get my day started and I'm on my computer, I will look at our queue and see if anything came in as far as outages, as far as tickets for support that have been escalated to us. Um, whether it be an email that another team has sent us to look into something. That's usually how I start my day. I also usually do a little to-do list because, as you know, it can get very busy, and your mind can get foggy about all the things that you have to do throughout the day. So I write a little to-do list, and I kind of check our ticket queue, check any outages that can happen over the night, and from there I kind of scope out my day, see what meetings I have, see what I need to do. If I'm working on any projects, I will create a plan for whatever that project is, meet with team members, and collaborate with my team members for our projects. Um, so most of the day, I'm really working on tickets that have came in, and I need to work on. But thing is that a lot of the time I'm prepping for projects. So the project that I'm working on right now is our team's phone migration. So we are going from a phone migration from Cisco, which is Cisco WebEx, that's their calling system, and we're switching to Teams phone. So I've been very heavily involved with the voice aspect of it and working with that conversion, configuring the new phone system and implementing it into our system. Another thing that I tend to do on a day to day is our DNS entries. DNS is the domain name system, and that's what converts IP addresses into domain names. I anytime we have a new device into our network, myself and another one of the engineers on my team are making sure that those names are configured with the correct naming convention and able to get out to the network with the right name. Um, that's kind of is usually the main things I do on my day to day, but it varies because if I have a heavy project coming up where I have maybe a site that needs to be built, I would be working on scripts for my configurations that I have. I'll write out, whatever the configuration is for that device, what it specifically needs, and I will have that ready for by the time I go onto that site and actually need to start doing the implementation of those devices. So it really just varies depending on what I have planned for the day. If it's a project that is, very intensely coming up, I'm working on that project throughout the whole day. But if it's more of a chill day where things are, I'm just going with the flow, tickets are coming in and I'm handling those tickets, that's what I'll be doing throughout the day.
Okay, fair enough.
So also for you, what is the day in the life of a software engineer like?
Day in the life. So currently I probably wake up about 8 a.m. And then probably head to the office about 8:30. And once I'm there, we do agile development, so we do things in 2 week sprints. So at the top of the sprint, we'll plan out what we're gonna do for the iteration. Uh, my team is a little bit more dynamic, so I might get a request similar to you, maybe not to the same in the same way. But yeah, so I'll look at my storyboard and whatever story I was working on or I want to start, I'll start on that. So, for example, what I may be working on is modifying the database. So I might have to do some scripting, do it in Python, and then uh, I'll be using like a proprietary language to interact with the database to handle whatever task needs to be done or modification that needs to be done. And I may be doing this task for another team.
When you say proprietary language, are you referring to like your company specific language that y'all use internally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like for example, if you have a specific database, I'm not gonna say it. You can only interface with it
Right.
with a certain language. So yeah, do that, and then what else? I might have some. I'm an admin over the database too, so I may have some requests that people have some issues with it, and yeah, that might be the day. We have Scrum at 1 p.m., so we'll just talk about what we've done for the day.
Is that daily?
Yes, daily.
Okay.
And I may have some meetings with some other people, maybe a senior dev, and I need some help on, getting past this stuck point. And, that's pretty much today.
Okay. So one thing that you said is that you guys kind of meet daily to discuss, what you guys are doing and what's going on. So on my team specifically, we meet once a week every Monday, right? We'll meet Monday and discuss what we have planned for the week and what we will do. What projects might be coming up, what changes are coming up. It kind of leads me to what I wanted to ask you next. So when you guys are changing, like say you have to change something inside of whatever database, whatever it is, you have to make a big change. Is there a process that you guys follow for implementing that change? Maybe alerting whoever needs to be alerted. What do you guys do?
So one thing I may do is I'll send out a message to the whole database and I'll say XYZ change will be taking place. Furthermore, before I even get to that step, I will test in the sandbox version. So I'll test, make doing what I need to do. So for example, I may take a first principles approach and make sure I can do what I need to do at the lowest level. And then from there, build on top of it. And that will basically lead out to the script being built. And then from there, that's when we go to production and go make. That's where the real changes come in. Yeah, and it's a lot to clean up if you mess up.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah.
For sure.
You don't want to mess up. Have you messed up before?
I have messed up.
I think that's the candidate for everybody right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I for sure messed up. I've wiped out an entire team's data. We just call it a data point.
Yeah.
And I had to go make another script to fix it.
Okay, yeah. I haven't knocked out a complete entire team's stuff, but I have. So on our switches, there's a thing called a port channel, which basically provides 4 links and combines them into 1 link. Like physically, it's 4 links, but logically on the connection, it'll be 1 link, which helps with redundancy. One of those links fail. So my smart self went ahead and accidentally put in a configuration that literally took down that port channel and that disconnected one server to a whole nother site. But luckily, it was to be fixed. Going back into the logs and seeing what went wrong with it, and I was able to work with a couple of the senior engineers and get that back up. But that was in a sense that was real scary because I was like, oh snap, what's going on? Why are these two things not talking? So yeah, got to be careful when we work in this tech field. You have to be very careful because one wrong move could mess a lot of things up.
So let me ask you this: what is the demographic like at your job? Is it mostly like I can say for Lockheed, there's a lot of Georgia Tech grads. There's also a lot of mid-tier schools, but mostly everybody's college educated, and it's mostly probably like 50% Caucasian, probably about 20% Black, and then I'll give the rest to Indian and Latino.
Yeah, so my company where I work for a consulting firm. I work for a Fortune 500 consulting firm, and the demographic kind of changes because most people who work internally for my company are people who are in the field of accounting, people who are in the field of finance and stuff. So we support them most of the time. But specifically for IT and network engineering, most it's pretty, how do I say it? I'm one of the only people of my complexion that are on my team, but we have sites like I mentioned in India, so we have a couple of people from India on my team as well. There's a couple of engineers who are based in India and work with us, but the majority is of Caucasian people. Um, Most people at my company are Caucasian people, but there are a couple people who are of other descent. But I don't want to say it's rare, but me being someone who doesn't really go into office that much unless we have a site to build out, I don't really get to see the demographic in full form. Um,
Makes sense.
and the thing is, when I do go on site, it's more than likely going to be after hours because you can't take down the network during hours. So most of the time it's after hours. So I really interact with mainly my team, unless a user puts in a ticket and I have to go help them out in person, which doesn't happen that often, but that does happen sometimes, and that'll be the only time I might go and actually see what the real demographic looks like. So, but most of the time, in my role, I am at home or in office after hours. So, yeah.
What about college educated or mostly certificates?
Most of them are college educated. Yeah,
Mhm.
most people are college educated that I work with. I'm trying to think of someone who isn't college educated, but most are college educated. Even if they're have the slightest college education, like a associate's degree, they will have certifications that back up their knowledge. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
So with software engineering, how often are you guys using things that implement like networking and cybersecurity with your job?
Ooh, so I would say for my team, it's not at cybersecurity isn't as important because it's not being it doesn't go to the actual plane. So like
Okay.
it doesn't have to worry about getting hacked from someone in Iran or something
Okay.
like that. But it is highly important. Like there's many stages. Like just for example, to put it for another team, they put everything in a document, which my team is actually responsible for generating. We made a tool that does it and cuts down it from 2 hours to 10 minutes. But I would say for those teams that are responsible for playing software, they have to go through extensive merge requests and get it approved by cyber, software quality as well, and then it can actually test it before, of course, and then it can actually go into
Okay.
um,
Production.
production. Yeah.
Got you. Got you. Got you. I mean, that sounds really cool. With us, before we are able to even push something, it has to go through, like I said, on those Monday morning meetings. We talk about it, and then it gets put in as a change control, right? Whatever we're doing gets put in as a change control, and then it takes a whole nother process backdoor that we don't even see. But there's internal people who look at the change, see if it makes sense, see if it doesn't make sense, and they approve it, and by the end of the week, you'll have your change approved for the next week. Um, that's usually how our processes go. The kind of things that not everything needs to change. Like sometimes you might just have to change a VLAN on a switch, and that doesn't really take a lot of time. You're able to do that with no change control. But there's things like upgrading the firmware of one of our devices. That's going to need to change because if we upgrade that firmware and that firmware has a bug in it, we'll have to downgrade it, and that's a big process. If we upgrade a firmware and it has a bug in it, that could take down the network potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, heavier things like that is what we put in change controls for, but it's kind of 50-50 depending on what it is. It's really based on what you believe user impact would be. Yeah.
So what's all right? A little change, of course, but what is the coolest thing about your job that you've experienced?
For me, I really enjoy going into server rooms. So when you go into one of our server rooms, so the company I work for has 90 sites all across the world. So when you go into the main server room in Grand Rapids, Michigan, it's just a different experience. You walk in here, you see all these things. You don't know what any of these things do until you actually get to start working with it. But you look at it and it's like a whole other world. You feel like you're in one of those movies that the guys are hacking into all these servers and stuff. It's just it's different to it's a different feeling when you're actually in there and you actually know what it is. Um, that's really been the biggest thing for me when I started to understand what all these different servers and services actually do and what I can actually use them for. It really made me like more intrigued in this field. So that for me is really server rooms and data centers. I really enjoy going in there and doing what I need to do in there. It's awesome in my opinion. How about you?
The coolest thing I've seen for sure working at my company, two aspects. When I first came in, it was cool to go through the tunnel and go past security. Now it's just more so annoying. It takes 10 minutes to get through. But in terms of the software aspect, it's definitely flying the simulator. Like being able to fly. I don't know how much they weigh, but it got four Mercedes or what's that? Four Maybach S engines on it. So being able to fly the plane in the simulator, it looks like a real cockpit. I actually flew it the other day. Crashing, seeing Atlanta. Yeah. That's probably the coolest piece. Wow.
Yeah, I feel like that would be cool. So did you say that you go through security to get to the simulator, or that just to get on site to your job?
Yeah, just to get on site, you have to go through, either the front point, which is security, and then, if you're a regular employee, of course, it gets a little bit quicker, but you have to go through this long hallway, then a long tunnel, and then like two flights of stairs, and then I actually get to where I need to work.
Right, I feel you. So if you didn't do software engineering, what do you think that what would your passion be? Whether it be tech, whether it be a different field, what would that be?
If I didn't pick computer science, well, I feel like there's nothing else I could have really picked. But if I didn't, perhaps computer engineering, electrical engineering, or maybe IT or cyber would really. What From my perspective now, I want to go more cyber. Well, not really. I like software, but I think it actually makes me kind of good, like a unique dime because I know the software side and I'm learning the cyber side. And just to take it back to remember your question too, because I want to ask it back to you. But just to take it back to the project aspect, for example, one thing I'm doing right now, as I'm getting my master's in cybersecurity, my friend is making a vibe coded website, so he doesn't have any background really in building software, and I'm going to do a risk assessment on his repository and website. So this is just another example how you can take real world problems, and that website is for a business. Yeah. So it has real world implications if it's not secure, it's not proper. You have hard coded things. So that's a way that you can find real world problems and create a project and put it on your resume. Um, I forget the question you asked me, but I do.
Yeah. So for me, if it was something else that I would have done, believe it or not, I growing up, I always wanted to be inside the medical field, and eventually I came to the realization that that wasn't for me. I'm not the big fan of science. I don't really like, I don't really like it anymore. So I fell in love with computers. I fell in love with building PCs eventually. Um, but if not the medical field, if not IT, not network engineering, I was very interested in mechanical engineering at one point. I feel like mechanical engineering is something that it's just a cool field, moving parts, all that stuff. I found an interest in it, but I kind of moved towards IT, and I've really been happy with the space that I'm in. I'm really happy with the career progression that I've been able to acquire. So I like IT, but if it wasn't IT and network engineering, it would be maybe mechanical or somehow, some world, some other life. It would be somewhere in the medical field.
Okay, and then what was the hardest class you took doing your bachelor's undergrad?
Hardest class I took. I took a couple. I took a lot of hard classes. It might have been a database class that I utilized SQL in. That was a pretty tough class. Just for the simple fact that I wasn't really familiar with SQL like that, and it was kind of it was just really difficult to learn it. But after learning it, it wasn't too bad. Took other classes like discrete mathematics and those classes too. Those were kind of rough, but The one that I hated was I took calculus two. I hated calculus two. I'm pretty sure you took calculus two as well. But yeah, calc two was a rough class as well, but made it through it. So yeah.
For sure, for me, my hardest class, and I always preach this, is it was discrete math, without a
Really?
doubt. Yeah, actually, some people don't speak on their failures.
Yeah.
I failed. I withdrew without failing discrete math the first time. I failed it the second time, and then on the third time, I was able to pass.
Yeah, no, that's a tough class though. Discrete math is a tough class, and before everyone takes it, I was warned. I'm like, bro, be ready for it because that's a tough class. Even data structure and algorithm, I'm sure those. I didn't have to take that with my degree. How was that for you?
So I withdrew without failing that one on the first time. They was teaching it in C++, so most of my coursework was taught in Java, and then they just switched it to
Yeah.
C++, and I think they realized they made a mistake because the next semester it was in Java, and I blew through it.
So, question before you go on, continue. Did you with that you didn't have an option to move it to Java? Because I know like the entry level, like the 1321 and 1322, they are you're able to choose a language because I was able to choose from C++. I was in the C++ at first, and then I actually moved to Java my freshman year. So did they not have it like that for data structure and algorithms?
No, not at the time. So I think they were just doing something department wise. I would say this was probably 2022. So they evolve, get better, realize how they want to do the department. But at that time, they forced me to take it in C++. Some crazy German professor, extremely hard, and yeah. But I still was able to graduate in 4 years with a 3.1 GPA. So
Perfect, man. So Key, I see that you've been on TikTok. I see you've been on Instagram a lot lately. Doing the interviews in public, doing all sorts of tech content, promoting the brand and everything. Can you talk to me a little bit about why you picked up content and why you chose to do software engineering content in general?
Okay, so the reason I do software engineering content was it was just more so the evolution of Key and where I was going in life. So, for example, when I was like 15, 16, I made 2K videos. I was a gamer. Most computer science majors are.
I swear. Yeah.
Yeah, and I made YouTube videos back then. And then once I got to college, I started taking YouTube more seriously. I was able to get to about 3.5K subscribers, but ultimately I ended up giving myself a false dichotomy and picking between computer science and YouTube when the truth is I could have went down both paths. Um, However, I wanted to start back up post my first year in the workforce. I'm like, all right, people is getting lit off the tech wave and I already like to make content, so why not? And from there, I've just tried to find a way to blend entertaining content with computer science.
Yeah.
Awesome. What about you? How did you get into content?
So for me, with IT, I was when I was coming up in college, I was, looking for advice from people who were in the space of information technology, and it was very hard to find people who have been through the who've been through an IT program. Most people go through a computer science program. Most people go through a software engineering program. It was very scarce to find people who were in an information technology program. So I decided I want to be the voice for people who are coming up in a program like IT and want to look at a career path and a career trajectory that they can follow. I started to get more specifically into network engineering when I eventually found that to be more of my passion. So I had an internship with Kennesaw State University. It was actually an apprenticeship, and I was working with the network engineering department, and that's kind of where my love for what network engineering is kind of skyrocketed. I was helping them configure. I was really helping them configure devices, update firmware on devices, do upgrades, plan out wireless. It was cool because it was not something that was the most conventional that everybody knows about, but it was still something that was really interesting to me. So with that, I decided to start making more network engineering content and talking about certifications, talking about the progression, talking about how to break into the field. And from there, I've really just built a platform based on, my career as a network engineer and my experiences and, my future experiences also going through my certification journeys. I'm currently studying for a certification right now, and I've been kind of taking my YouTube on a journey of how I'm prepping for it. And, when I get the certification, my whole journey will be documented throughout that process.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Um, I know with you, so as far as content, are you kind of doing it just as a for fun thing, or are you really trying to build like a personal brand with it? Because I seen you, you have your merchandise, your cooked merchandise, which is y'all definitely go shop cooked. But yeah,
Techkey.com.
techkey.com, yes, yes. But I've seen your merchandise. So are you trying to build like a brand and maybe eventually get into some kind of consulting or something, or what does that look like?
For sure, a personal brand, and right now I provide products and services. So, for example, I do tech consultations, which I did 5 people free, and from there I started to charge. But and also I have my product line, so I have a wrist rest. Because I use a mouse a lot, so
Yeah.
um, what else do I have? And then I have the cook merchandise. But yeah, the ultimate goal is to be able to build my personal brand such that I am independent. I can, have my own income without having to rely on someone else.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. That's also me. That's another reason why I'm sticking with content because anything can happen. You know how the world is. Anything can happen, and being able to have that second income from social media is I feel like that's a cheat code right now. There's people who are making thousands of dollars a month strictly off of social media, and yeah, that's also just like you trying to build a personal brand. That's also another reason why I've been, starting to get a lot more consistent. I eventually want to go into consulting and helping people be able to know the right infrastructure for their company, know the right security systems, know how to build their company from scratch. I've had one contract with someone before and with a company before, and I kind of helped them build their network infrastructure from scratch. Kind of gave them what I believe is the best blueprint to scale it, and also for future use how it could properly be scaled. So yeah, consulting is something that I'm also definitely trying to get into, just like you. So yeah, yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough. Wasn't there one more question?
yeah.
Oh, what is your advice for people that want to become a network engineer and kind of take your path?
Yeah, so for me, I would definitely recommend starting your certifications early. If you can get into network engineering, if you see that network engineering is really what you want to do, I'd recommend you to go and take the Network Plus by CompTIA. That would be the first certification I recommend you to go take, right? You after you take the Network Plus by CompTIA, you will have an understanding about what a network is. You understand different routing protocols. You understand how to secure a network. You understand the concepts of securing a network, all of that stuff, right? So after you get the Network Plus, I would recommend that you start looking for positions in as a NOC, which is a network operations center, a NOC technician. I would recommend you start looking for junior level network engineering positions. I would recommend you start looking for network administration positions, especially because most network engineers start off as a network administrator, right? So I would recommend you take that Network Plus, and then after you get a Network Plus and you've started looking for jobs, maybe you have a nice little job currently. I'd recommend you start looking into the Cisco Certified Network Associate, which is the CCNA. You take the CCNA and you start practicing labs. You start make a home lab, build a server or two, and run a whole bunch of protocols, add a whole bunch of services on it, and get that hands-on experience that you can't get if you don't really get that, if you don't really build something, if you don't really break and build something, you never get the hands-on experience. So make a home lab, get your CCNA, get a network engineering position, apply, scale yourself, and get that network engineering position, and just go from there. After you get that first network engineering position, you can really scale yourself so much. You can really move into anything because pretty much everything runs on the network, right? All computer systems run on the network. If you could have the basic understanding of what a network is and how to run a network, you can really move into many aspects, whether it be cybersecurity, whether it be cloud computing. You can move into these things a lot more freely than if you just went straight into it and you didn't really understand what the network was initially. So yeah.
Fair enough.
So right back at you though. What is how shoot, what was the question?
No, no. If someone was wanting to become a software engineer, what route would that give them? I would. Let's just take it from 18. So let's say you're 18 and you're in college for computer science. First year, you need to be applying to internships.
Yeah.
and you need to be outside. You need to join clubs, especially clubs that are related to your major. You need to participate in every single hackathon that your school offers, and ideally you'll win one. And then from there, as you apply internships, you learn. You should theoretically have a job out of college if you're doing it right. And don't wait till that senior year.
That's where a lot of people feel. I see people. I hate this, but I see people who wait until the last year of undergrad and then they start looking for jobs. That's the worst thing you can do for yourself, right there.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because the real world is hard, and you can die on the streets out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go to job fairs, and then let's say you're at a midpoint in your life. Let's say you're 25 and you have no real background, and you just want to be a software engineer because you're an ambitious young man, or woman. I would say you probably go the boot camp route. First learn if that's something that you want to do because it is very tedious and iterative. Um, so yeah, do a little background research, play around, test the waters, and then go commit to that boot camp. And then while you're in the boot camp, similarly, you need to go to paid tech events. I go to tech events. I have a job. I go to many tech events in Atlanta. So go to paid tech events and get some numbers up for applications, ideally 5 a day.
Yeah. So, before we end off, I had a question for you also on what you do. So, as a network engineer, right, we have different teams within network engineering. There's people who work with voice, which is like telecom and phone and stuff, right? There's people who work on wireless, which is Wi-Fi, wireless access points, and there's people who also do routing and switching, which is configuring routes to different sites. Is it like that also with software engineering?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Right. So basically, what I'm saying is that network engineering is just different teams you could be on within the network engineering. You can be on a security team. You can be on a voice team, a wireless team. You could be on a routing and switching team. So with software engineering, is it something similar to that, or is there like a data protection team? Is there this specific team that works on this service? Like, how does that?
So I would say it's more program-esque, being that we work with the government and different governments. So like Israel or New Zealand is split up by program, and your team, you may be working on a variation of a C-130J for that specific program or Air Force. So I would say it's split up more so in that. And then you also have my team, which is responsible for digital transformation and productivity. So that's how I would say it's split up, productivity team, and then, product specific teams. And then, you do have the cyber, but like, I don't work with cyber. And then you have software quality. I don't work with them either, but they have like they have a team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. No, that's cool. That's cool. So, would you recommend people to specialize on one aspect of software engineering, or do you feel like it's best to just be a master of, not master, but at least know everything?
I would say the core thing you need to know is data structures and algorithms, and know if you want to be a front end dev or a back end or full stack. And then from there, hone in on that skill. I would still apply, even if I wanted to be a back end dev, I would apply for front end positions because I can pick it up.
Right.
So the goal is mostly get a job, and then once you have a job, then you get to pick more what you want to do.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Key. We're kind of near to the end of this conversation. So, before I let you go, is there anything that you believe I should have asked you that I didn't get a chance to ask you?
I think one thing that people don't know that much about is the clearance. If you work for a defense contract, you basically get an automatic clearance, and those cost like 3 to 15K. You can only get them with a company that does work with classified work. So I think a lot of people don't actually know how useful that is, especially if you want to get into cybersecurity. You having that clearance early, it is pretty beneficial.
Yeah.
And you also get to work on classified work, potentially. And probably be the only thing I may have wanted to speak about. What about yourself?
I mean, for me, is a lot of people wonder why I chose network engineering over a lot of other things in technology. And for me, I kind of mentioned it a little bit, just scratch the surface earlier. It's just that the fact that everything runs on the network. And I find that so cool because on our day to day, we log on to Wi-Fi, we connect via cellular, call people, but we don't really know how all of that stuff works until you really dig deep into it. And it's really cool. You know what I mean? It's really cool, and I find it very interesting. So that's really the reason why I got into network engineering, just to dive deeper and have an understanding. Because when you think about it, how the heck does a Wi-Fi work? Why? How do you just connect to Wi-Fi and all of a sudden you're able to view on Instagram, right? So I just find all that stuff cool, and digging deeper into it, network engineering has been able to give me a way to dig deep and learn a lot of that stuff. So
No, I feel you. It's kind of the same with software. Like, I mean, it's cool to go on your phone, and or even when I made apps in college, this is the app I made, and
yeah,
I know exactly how it works and what's behind it. So
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. Well, so yeah, that's it with Tech Talks with Key and Chris.
I appreciate you for having me on and sparking this.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So if you guys don't know where to find Key, you can go ahead and promote yourself real quick.
You can go on Instagram, TechKey, TechK, and 3Y, and on TikTok, TechKey. Just type in Tech and Key, and it should pop up. If it don't, it won't.
Okay.
What about you?
And for me, you guys can find me on TikTok at TechyChris. TechyChris with 2 S's at the end, and on YouTube, if you type in TechyChris, you will find me there as well. Key, it was a pleasure speaking with you, man, and yeah, that's it for
sure, man.
For sure. All right.